Okay, wonderful. Yesterday, we learned in this amazing book, which is called the Torah Ohr, written by the first Rebbe of Chabad. We use the Moshiach of his generation. And one of the main purposes of Moshiach is to educate everybody as to what God is. As he explained, that's the purpose of the Torah. And in the Torah, we can find messages about not only what God is, but what God wants from us. And even more, how he inspires us to accomplish what he requests. And one of the main things that he wants is that we should love. God wants us to appreciate him. And that we can only get appreciating is by understanding something. So having the proper concept of what God is, at least we're going in the right direction. That's called Chokhmah. And the proper understanding of that concept, that's called Bina. And then connecting to it so that it actually becomes real. So that's what the Rebbe is saying. The Rebbe is saying over here that one of the main features of Judaism is the Jewish soul. And the Jewish soul is very, very active in its relationship to God and consequently in its relationship to the world, because God is creating the world and God put us in the world in order to change the world. And there's many facets of this Jewish soul, and one of them is Abraham, another one is Yitzchak, and another one is Jacob. We're not talking about Jacob yet because our Torah portion deals mainly with Yitzchak. So Yitzchak, he is the second father of Judaism, and he has two aspects of him. One is that Yitzchak he brought into the world through the Jews and the Jewish soul a tremendous fiery yearning and desire for God, to come closer and closer to God and to bring God more and more into the world. Oh, there we go. Shalom, Paul. So Yitzchak then is like fire, a fiery love of God. And it says in the book, A Song of Songs, right near the end. Here it's a sentence. Let me find the Song of Songs, and I'll read this to you. Song of Songs is 8 chapters long, and this is right near the end. Let's see, where is this? There it is. Mayim Rabim. Here, Mayim Rabim. It's the 8th chapter, the 7th sentence. And it says, Mayim Rabim, like turbulent or multitude of waters, rushing waters, lo yuchlu are not able to extinguish the love, and rivers cannot wash it away. And then it says in the end, if a person gives all of the riches of his house in love, buz yabuzu lo, then it will be, how do you say, buz yabuzu? There's two different meanings of buz. Buz means that it'll be rejected, and the other meaning of buz is like to take buz, to take spoils of war. That he'll really want that. Okay, but what does it mean? What does it mean? The waters can't put. It says the Rebbe explained up to now that what sentence I just read you, by the way, that's the title of this paragraph, explaining it. It says these multitude of waters, that's all the pleasures of heaven, all the spiritual pleasures you could possibly imagine, which are basically unimaginable, but levels of spiritual dimensions of pleasure that there are. And like the angels, when they get a little bit of this, they burn up, they want to go up higher and higher, because pleasure is a feeling of life. There's also bad pleasures, right? Misleading pleasures of this world, pleasures like they say of the flesh that can mislead you. I mean, it's not a bad thing, to eat a good meal and to get pleasure from putting on a nice pair of shoes or something like that. That's not a bad thing at all, but that's certainly not That's not a primary. It's secondary to the purpose. You put shoes on in order that you can walk in the street, right? It's not that you put on shoes because they look nice, even though they hurt your feet. Right? You can't go anywhere with them because you don't want to get them dirty or something like that. There's a purpose to it. The same thing as the purpose of all the pleasures in this world. There's a purpose, and to have all the pleasures in this world. And the purpose is that to encourage us to use the world for what God wants, and not to fool ourselves. So it says, but that's one type of pleasure. But then there's also the pleasures of heaven, which those also can be misleading. The pleasures of heaven are there because it's a greater revelation of life, a greater revelation of the Creator. So on one hand, it's very good because it's like a rung on a ladder. It lets you know that there are levels of revelation of God, and that up to now we've been fooling ourselves in this world thinking that this is all there is. There's higher. And when you realize there's higher than this world, then you realize, well, maybe there's higher than that world also, and then higher than that world. Right? The Rebbe wants to explain, why is it that people sleep? When you sleep, you're basically, how do you say, nullified. Instead of a person living, let's say, 120 years and sleeping 1/3 of that time. So why don't people just live 80 years, right? And the 40 years you go to sleep. So there's no sleep. What do you get accomplished by sleep? So the Rebbe said the whole purpose of sleep is, especially serving God, what can you learn from God when you're asleep? So the main thing when a person is asleep, a lot of times you really feel that that's reality, especially you get into dreams, you get all excited about the dream, you get afraid, you get whatever it is. You really think it's real. And then you wake up, you realize it wasn't real. So the same thing is, it lets you understand that now what we really think is real, this world, is we have to wake up and we realize that it wasn't really as real as we thought it was. There's something infinitely more real. I mean, a dream is certainly real. It's a dream. A dream is a real thing. But it's not to be taken as ultimate reality. Right? There is such a thing as dreams. Right? The dreams exist. But dreams are, as they say, they are dreams. It's not really reality. It has the reality of a dream, right? Dreams are things, but what the dreams are the situation there is not a real situation. It's just a dream situation. The same thing as the world. So it says the same thing is we can get out of the pleasures of this world, and then there's the afterlife. When a person goes afterwards and he gets into heaven, he gets the pleasures and he's basking in heaven, that's also a big bluff. That's also not to be taken as ultimate reality. It's also a dream, a form of a dream. It's more real than here. So what is really reality? The Creator. The Creator is creating this whole business. And where is the Creator found? Only in Torah and commandments. By using this world, one of the commandments, like I said, is to love God. In order to love God, so you have to unify yourself. You have to get yourself together. Usually people in this world, they have a million personalities, right? When they're with their family, they're one person. When they're at their job, they're another person. When there's something, everything goes the way they want, they're one person. When things don't go the way they want, they're another person. They can't find your keys, or you get cheated, and then whatever it is, and the guy shortchanges you, and you're another person. Ideally, it should be that everything that happens to you, you should say, listen, this is happening because God wants it to happen. What am I supposed to do about it? But your main attention is loving God. That's what it's supposed to be. In order to do that, you have to really get yourself together. And that you can only do with Torah and the commandments. And that's the idea of Rivka. Rivka, he said, is a team. A team of oxes is called a Rovka. I think that's how you pronounce it. And that means unifying your personality, your animal soul. It's called your animal soul, to unify your animal soul. So that's what it means that Rivka went down with her pitcher, her cod, to the Mayan, and she drew water. Rivka is this idea of unifying the everything in this world, including your animal soul, especially. And the way you look at the world, and you kind of want to call it natural soul. Nothing against the animals, but in relation to the Creator, your regular soul is like an animal. So unifying that, so it says by means of that, Rivka, by her joining all these things together, Rivka, she joins it together, she can take the Kad, which they said that's the 24 books of the Torah, and go down into the Mayan, which that's the source of all life, and she can draw it out. In other words, she can draw out this revelation of godliness, which is going to be in the future, lamata, in this physical world. Therefore, it says that tzaddikim say that the angels, this is by the tzaddikim, that in the future, even the angels are going to say they're holy. So the angels, that they get all these pleasures of the world to come, and they feel, well, they feel what going to heaven really is all about. It's absolutely nothing compared to the revelations that are incurred by doing Torah and the commandments. Torah and the commandments attach to the essence of the Creator, the reason for the creation. That's what it means, Mayim Rabim, that all this multitude of waters, which said are the pleasures of the upper worlds, Lo Yacholon, they are not able to extinguish et ahava, this love. Perish. What does it mean, Mayim Rabim? What does it mean, this multitude of waters? We said is the pleasures of the upper worlds. How would we access this pleasures of the upper world that we would even think that it might extinguish our fire for the essence of God, right? Yitzchak is this fire for the essence of God, and these waters, which are the pleasures of heaven, cannot extinguish it. So who is going to give me, right? Where am I going to get these pleasures of heaven that they're not going to, they won't put out this fire? It's like a person says, I love my country so much. If you would give me $1 million to hate my country, I wouldn't do it. Who's going to give you $1 million? Who's going to give you $10 million? You're just talking, right? You're talking $10 million. Let's see what happens if somebody really gives you $10 million, right? If you really would, $10 million, same thing. I love God so much. All the pleasures of heaven would not put it out. Where are you going to get the pleasures of heaven? Who's even offering you such a thing? So the Rebbe said, I am, and I'll tell you how. Mitbonen. Hitbonenut. Hitbonenut means thinking deeply. There is a way in this physical world to access the pleasures of the upper worlds. And how is that? That's by contemplation. Contemplation. When a person contemplates, contemplation can give you an awareness of a feeling, not just an awareness, not just intellectual, an actual feeling of the pleasures of the upper worlds. Contemplation, how so? Let me just give you an example. I'll give you an example. I'm making up this example, but maybe it's good, maybe not. Let's say the person is a person that's poor. Poor. He doesn't have a place to sleep. He's homeless. He rummages through the garbage, right? He finds out that there's, let's say, a garbage can in back of this, fish restaurant. Once in a while, they throw out a couple of, fish that people don't want or something like that on the table, and he eats. That's where he eat. By him, that's heaven, right? Somebody throws out like a half a fish that he didn't eat on this is. One day somebody comes up to him and he says, nice ring you got. What type of a ring is that? He says, it was something I found a couple of days in the garbage. It looks nice. He says, look, that thing could be worth a lot of money. What are you talking about? Nothing I have is worth. I have no luck. And he says, go to the jeweler over there and ask him, right? Knocks on the jeweler's door. I'm not giving any charity today. Go away. He says, no, I want to know, how much is this ring worth? He says, okay, stick your hand through the door. You smell bad. Look at the door. He looks at the thing. Where'd you get that ring from? He said, I don't know. I found it in the garbage. I don't know. You found this thing in the garbage? He says, yeah. He says, well, this is a genuine star ruby or something. I'm just making this up. That thing is worth $3 million. You're a rich man. He says, really? He's been walking around with this ring on for like the last 5 years. Where'd you find it? 5 years? I found it. Right? The jeweler says, listen, do me a favor. Let me check in the police records. Maybe somebody lost a ring like this. Maybe, no, nobody lost it. It's yours. $5 million. Good. The guy is sitting there. He's got this ring. What's he going to do? Looks at the ring. Suddenly he starts to think, starts to contemplate. This thing is really worth, is that man telling me the truth? Would somebody really give me that much money for that? What would I do with so much money? But he goes to the jeweler and says, listen, you're a nice person. You helped me out. Is this really worth 5 million? That you would give me 5 million for it? He says, I wouldn't give you 5 million. I would give you, let's say, 4.9. What do you mean 4.9? 4,900,000 I'd give you. I'll make 900,000, 100,000. He says, you would actually give me that much money? He says, listen, I wouldn't give you that much money. You have to put the money in the bank, but you know what you could do with that money? He says, yeah, wow, I could even go into that restaurant and buy a whole fish myself. He said, you could buy the restaurant. You could buy 5 restaurants with that money. You could buy 20 restaurants. What are you talking about? You're a rich man. Little by little, he starts to think, I could give charity. I got all my friends over there that live, these homeless guys with me. I could help them out too. I could buy them. They would really be happy. Says, yeah, sure. You could give each one of them, $1,000. How many friends you got? You could take $4 million. If you have 4,000 friends, you could give each one $1,000. Wow, that's amazing. He starts to think all these things he could do, how much happiness he could make for people, how much happiness was it. But he had the ring, it was already there. It was right in front of him. But he didn't know. He just thought he was poor and he was eating garbage. And now it's the same thing with us. We have this amazing treasure, which is called God, the Creator. He's creating us. And we have a soul. And it's a diamond. It's worth billions, right? Billions. Maybe not in, monetary terms, financial terms in this world, but even more so, what does money do? It just gives you pleasure. When a person has money, when he gets security, he gets money. The godly soul is infinitely more. You're connected to God, the Creator. You have to stop thinking so much about the world, clean the thing. All of a sudden, a person starts thinking, who am I? What am I? God is creating me. He starts to realize what he has. And even more, he has to realize what he is. What he is. That you have to, if I give up everything that I have, all my stupid ideas about what I want, a garbage life that I'm living, is all of a sudden I can realize that I've got this treasure. It's hitbonenut, thinking. By means of thinking and contemplating, we can suddenly reveal what there really is, the value of every second of life, the value of being aware, the value of being of being able to serve the Creator of the universe, to do what God wants. By means of thinking about this, a person can understand the greatness of God. God is creating the sun, he's creating the moon, this is incredible. I can't create anything, right? I can't create a fleck of dirt. Create from nothing. I can't create anything. I can take one thing and make it into another thing. God is creating, he's creating me. What is God? When you start to think about and that God is creating me. He's creating, when you think about that, what's called the upper unity and the lower unity of God, when we say Shema Yisrael, and that's, by the way, what the Moshiach is going to do. He's going to awaken the Jews that they'll realize what God is, and the Jews will be examples to the whole world of what God is. Everyone will be rich. Everyone will be Shema Yisrael, and Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Olam. When we think about the first 2 sentences of Shema Yisrael, we say, Shema Yisrael, listen, Jews, God is our God, God is one. And the second sentence, which says, blessed may his name be drawn down to the world forever and ever. Shemizeh, from this is drawn down, Ahava Bakal Levavacha. We get from this, you get the second sentence after these 2 sentences. The third sentence of you. It's called loving God. You love God with all of your heart. Suddenly, that is the thing that becomes more precious. Like, let's take our example. Suddenly, this person has this tremendous value for this ring that he's got. He realizes how wonderful it is, and especially he likes the jeweler who told him all this. The jeweler could have said, the thing's worth, I'll give you $100 for it. He could have tricked him, but he loves it. The same thing, you have a tremendous love for God, and you have a tremendous love for the Rebbe who told us how great God is. And that's what it means, loving. Zu Gadol Moed. And this love for God is tremendously big. Liot nafshot sama. Your soul starts to thirst for God. This was the level of Yitzchak we talked about. When you start thinking about what God is, then you awaken this aspect of Yitzchak in your soul, and you have a tremendous thirst for God, more than people have a thirst for money or for power, for whatever pleasures or whatever they do. Well, this love, you cannot quiet it down and to the Chabad, or to extinguish this tremendous thirst and love by means of water itself. What's water? The ideas of God that you perceive. No matter how great is, right, your love for God, this is where sort of my metaphor sort of breaks down. Okay, but let's say even more. Let's even take the metaphor a little step further, right? So here you got this person, and you say you're rich, you're fat, you have all this money, and you're rich, you're a multimillionaire, and the person thinks, well, this is really great, and he gets this jeweler to advise him, and he pays him, a good sum, and he gives him advice where to put the money, where to invest the money. He starts washing up, he buys a house, he gets dressed, he gets married, his children suddenly, but he starts to think, this guy, listen, I'm rich, I have this, I can give charity, but who am I? Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing with this money. Who am I? Maybe I could be like, buy guns with it, or maybe I could buy like a big hit of cocaine. For $1 million worth of cocaine, I can make $100 million. That's maybe the best investment. Maybe not. Maybe all of a sudden the person starts thinking, but once again, who am I? This this jewel is tremendously valuable. The same thing is also over here. A person can think about God, suddenly realizes, like we say, like the jeweler told him, you have a godly soul. This is, you wake it up, you start thinking about God. Any revelations that you can get from this, just like this guy gets money, how much money he gets, it doesn't really tell him, once again, but who am I? Who am I? What is this, all this money, these levels, these pleasures, these awareness of God that I can get? But who am I? Why am I? How can I understand this? How did I suddenly become the center of this whole business, that I understand God and I am rich and I think this and I this? Maybe this I has a source to it. Maybe this I has a source to it. Maybe what is the source of everything that there is? All these upper unities, and let's take our metaphor. What's the source of all this money? Why is there money in the world? What's the purpose of it? Why am I alive with this money? What's the purpose? So therefore, all these revelations will not satisfy this person. He can have billions of dollars. He can have whatever he wants to, or corresponding, we're talking about, you can have as much revelations of God and understanding of God, but still it's not answering really the question is, who am I? Who is this real I? And you start to realize that this I is a creation of God, and that God wants me to be here. So what is God? And so he says that God is here because of Shuv Lechad Dav Gali de Esek Torah and the mitzvahs. Only by doing the Torah and the commandments. That attaches us to the essence of what God is. It's the same thing. A person has all this money, but why do I have the money? What should I do with this money? What's the purpose of it, right? In our case, let's say to make other people feel good. But here we're saying to make the whole world feel good. When a Jew does a commandment, when a Jew learns the Torah, it actually opens up pleasure to the essence of God. That we can't bring a metaphor for that, at least in this diamond thing. Moshiach, which is not the case. When a person understands God alone, who rak yadia mitzius, you only know that God exists. Right? Like in our case, he knows that he's got money. He's got money, but where does it come from? What's the same thing? A person that realizes the greatness of God, so he realizes the greatness, but what is God himself? Says that is only expressed in the Torah and the commandments. That is the essence of what God is. Exactly the opposite of what the world thinks. The world thinks God is something spiritual, it's way up there. And Torah and commandments, it's just, rituals or something like that for low life people, for people that they don't have big souls. People who have big souls, they don't need the Torah and the commandments. Right? The Torah and the commandments, that's just, simple stuff for little kids. It's like, mathematics. When you have to have like 2 bananas and 2 bananas, for the physical things you need for little kids, they don't understand mathematics. But you can't use bananas and things like that for calculus or trigonometry. Right? Right? How many? What's the square root of? I learned it. So the sine, the cosine, but you can't use bananas to figure those things out. So that's usually the way people think, that the physical is lower than the spiritual. Here, the Rebbe is saying, no. The physical is connected to the essence. And when we do with the physical what God wants, the commandments, that's the thing of Rivka, we said. then that reaches to the essence of God above all these revelations, above all these water, we said this water, these pleasures of the world to come. In this world, we can only know that God exists. But the essence of what God is, this is only in the commandments. In the commandments, when a Jew does a commandment, it grasps in mahus v'atzmus the essence of God, so to speak, by means of the actual mitzvot ma'asiyot of the 248 commandments. So this is yeter, this is even more. Yeter I'll call even more. Afilu hasagas shebegan Eden. Even not just the understandings that we have in this world of God, but even the understandings that we have when we go up to heaven. We get shuhu hasagas mahus ziva shechina, that we get a glimpse of the ray of God's pleasure that he gets from our Torah and commandments. But it's only a ray. It's not God's essence. In Kol Zeh, nevertheless, we get a ray of God's essence. Not just the fact, the idea that God exists. We get a little bit of what God is that's in heaven, but it's just a ray. Nevertheless, it says, Mayim Rabin. Nevertheless, even these waters can't quench this love. We said this before, if you remember. The pleasures that the angels get in the upper worlds is from a lesser level of godliness than what the souls get in the world to come through the Torah and the commandments that they get. But nevertheless, the pleasure and the revelations that the souls get through the commandments that we did here in this world, that's only a little ray of God's essence. This is called the Mayim Rabim. That's called this pleasure. It's a greater pleasure than even the angels get. But nevertheless, these Mayim Rabim, this tremendous amount of pleasure that's drawn from this river that comes from Eden, it cannot put out the love of Rivka. We said Rivka is using this physical world to serve God. We said before, Mili Shemayim, Kiagili, the revelation in heaven that arouses our loving God with all of our hearts and things like that. Right? That's just the revelation. The fact is, the love that we have is not the goal. The love that we have for God, that is also just a commandment. And even though that you can only attain this love of God by having some contemplation, some idea of what God is, but nevertheless, that love is only a means to an end. What's the end? Making God happy. By using our heart, unifying our heart to the Creator, instead of our heart being all spread all over the world. This makes me mad, this makes me happy, this makes me depressed, this makes me jealous, this makes me this. Everything is forgotten. That's an easy thing to say. Then that's what we said is Rivka, that's taking this world and joining it together. Nevertheless, the revelations that you get for this is only a ziv ha'ora. It's just a ray of godliness. That's called the received pras, a reward. But the love that we said before, this is to God's essence. If, on the other hand, inside of this love that you do for the commandment, inside of this is a little bit of selflessness. And that's what it says, Naros Leishtafu. Nevertheless, these rivers cannot put out this love of God. That's what it means, Naharos Leishtafu. What's Nahar? Nahar is the river. That's the river that comes from Eden. It says that the Jewish people may aver a Nahar. How did Abraham was called a Hebrew? The word in Hebrew is a American, what do they call it, plagiarization or something, of the word Ivri. Ivri means on the other side. So they say that in the Torah it says that Abraham came from the other side of the river. It says he came from the other side. Avram Ivri, he came from the other side. Me'ever nahar yeshvu avotecha. This is this tremendous love we said. That's the river. Himagas lamaila, but this river, this tremendous love, it can reach even higher than this river that we talked about, which is the source of all. The river comes, it says it comes from the Mayan, it comes from the wellspring. The wellspring, we said, is from the essence of God himself. Okay, so what do we have from all this? What we have from all this is by using this physical world properly and by using our natural soul, aka also known as the animal soul, by using it properly and unifying it to reality and thinking about what God is and getting the proper understanding of what God is that enables us to do the commandments. And one of the commandments is to love God and to do the commandments. And this doing the commandments of God and thinking about God and loving God, which is also a commandment, is this opens up the door to the spiritual pleasures of the world, of the upper worlds. And these spiritual pleasures are just like nothing compared to the essence pleasure that God gets and that is also revealed to us. It says in the raising of the dead, that is the only thing that can extinguish this love that we have for God, to see, feel, and see the essence of God, and that essentially we don't really exist when we're not doing the Torah and the commandments. True existence is aroused only when we are doing what God wants. When we're not doing what God wants, feeling what God wants, so to speak, we don't really exist. So therefore, feeling godliness, that's not really truly doing what God wants. Doing what God wants means loving God and etc. So we have three levels, if you want to call it, three levels. One of them is the pleasures of this world. The other is the pleasures of the upper worlds. And the third level is the essence revelation of God, a different type of pleasure. The essence of pleasure of God, which will only be revealed in the future. And that's what it says, and we can't really go into this too much, but here it says, Im yiten ish, let me explain to what it says. Ish is talking about God, and im means when. When, it certainly will. When God gives at hon beito, be'ava, when God does give us this essence revelation in the future, boz yabuzulo, then we will grab it and be satisfied with it. That is what's going to satisfy with us. That's what the Rebbe explains in the end. So all of this is brought about. It's a whole different orientation to what this world is, how incredibly valuable this world is, and how incredibly mistaken are those people who live for going to heaven. And it's a good thing. They're going to heaven, it's good. Who says it's not good? But to live only for that is a big mistake. It's a big mistake. It's almost like, a doctor living only to make money. And he can buy a big house and he can impress people and everything. Those are good things. But the main thing of a doctor is supposed to heal people. That's the reason. The same thing, the main thing of a Jew and eventually the whole entire world is not to acquire these pleasures of the world to come, which that's what all the other religions say. You do this, you're going to go into heaven. You don't, you're going to go into hell. The person's thinking about himself all the time. Only selfishness. It says, even if what they say is true, which the fact of the matter, it's not true, right? By what they doing what they say will not get you into heaven. But let's say it is true, right? But that's not you took the wrong train. That's not the goal of life. You got to your goal, you got to the destination, right? But that's not the true destination, right? I don't understand. This is the train to Chicago. Yeah, I got off at Chicago. Yeah. So the Shluchim convention is in Chicago, isn't it? What are you talking about? It's in New York. You got it the wrong place. Same thing. I lived my whole life in order to go to heaven. This is heaven, right? Yeah, it's heaven. This is it, right? This is where the essence of God. No, it's not the essence of God. The essence of God is not in heaven. The essence of God is by doing Torah and commandments in this physical world. He says, well, what happens when I die? He says, that's only a temporary. Your grave is the waiting room. Eventually, there's going to be the raising of the dead, and then everyone will feel the incredible preciousness, incomprehensible preciousness of the pleasure that we gave God by means of doing His Torah and His commandments. And that's what we're doing right now. Every moment becomes infinite. And that's what the Rebbe says. This is the only thing that will really satisfy the thirst of the Jewish soul, when we feel the true oneness and true happiness that God experienced when we did His will. Okay, now we're going to learn try to finish the Sikha. I don't know if we'll finish. Tomorrow we'll finish. The speech that the Rebbe gave in Devar Malchut about the amazing lesson that we can learn from the new moon.